Congratulations. Well, amen. Since God has been so gracious to my family, because he spares my mom and the majority of my family who are stubborn, lukewarm believers or just general unbelievers, it's only it's required of me to be obedient because God has been so kind to me. And even when my family may be affected by this in the future or in the years to come, I still want to be obedient to God because I want my love to not be conditional for him. So I'm recording 3 o'clock in the morning on Passover, first day of it. This is the day where Passover starts, but you start eating unleavened bread by tomorrow. So God encouraged me to talk about certain topics today that are really heavy. And I want to prepare people for that ahead of time as they listen. Hell is real. Hell is so very real. And you understand, for the most part, Christ died so that we may be free from the grasp and the debts that we owed because of our spiritual sins and iniquity that would have gotten us into hell without us being of a certain bloodline. That's what Jesus' sacrifice meant for us, where even if you were a Gentile, you'd have the opportunity to basically see the Christ and see the Lord in heaven if you were deemed worthy by them. And that is grace, guys. To understand, before, salvation was impossible for everybody, and it was barely possible for people of the bloodline of the prophets themselves. Even they were stubborn and obdurate, where I am listing in my outline that the bloodline of the prophets were generally obdurate. They were stiff-necked people, my goodness. And since we are our grandfathers, and without Christ especially, we are nothing better than what our grandmothers and our grandfathers were. Yeah, I can see how the Hebrews were obdurate, because they still are today. Anyway. The Bible mentions something very important, where stubborn people are considered workers of iniquity and idolatry, which is an important point to make, because in 1 Samuel chapter 15, verse 23, it says, "And Samuel said, hath the Lord as great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifices as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams." That is powerful to me. All right, God is saying, for rebellion is as the sin of witchcraft, and stubbornness is as iniquity and idolatry, because thou hast rejected the word of the Lord. He hath also rejected thee from being king. And And that was basically Samuel talking to Saul, because at this point Saul was being very stubborn, and Samuel was bringing up a point that the Lord took Saul out of nothing and made him a king, and Saul was getting ahead of himself. And this is sort of a message and a wake-up call for a lot of people, where we want to thank God here and there and sprinkle a praise, and we think that we've served a purpose, or that we've done something for him. But we thank God and we show our gratitude through obedience and being a living sacrifice to God. And I'm actually going to say this in this video. God revealed something to me very important, which, it makes total sense too. And I'm not sure if God reminded me of this, or if this was a revelation that is meant to be shared at the moment, and that's why it coming to my mind so vividly at the moment. But parents fall short of their responsibilities by not praying over their children, where their children are being attacked, and parents don't necessarily pray over them. So that's why a lot of children, with purpose especially, die before their parents. And unfortunately, my mother, since she has struggled with her walk with God, she doesn't pray as much. So I pray on behalf of my family. I pray on behalf of myself without having a lot of people to cover me. My mom thinks that kind of having this ransom sort of relationship, or this conditional loving relationship where as long as I'm fine, she won't be mad at God, is a sufficient sort of an approach to have a relationship with God, like our merciful God. And she doesn't understand that a big part of why I will die before her, because God has revealed it to me so many times, but a big part of me dying before her is that she has made it hard. By her failing to complete her responsibilities, she has made it harder for me to endure living on this earth, because even if I am I do encounter probably spiritual warfare on so many different planes, and levels of playing fields, and God has spared me from so much of it, and there's probably encounters where people have wanted me dead and have committed some sort of practice of wishing evil and wishing death on my life, and God has spared me from it. I know this is true because I even had death threats sent to me on different occasions, and instances of stalkers. So this doesn't really shock me, but what doesn't help is each and every time that this has happened, instead of my mom praying over me, she gets a bit bitter. That's what my mom has a heart of bitterness that she needs to work on before she dies. So even then, when the Lord has expressed to me that I may go before my mother, I'm all right with it. I just want my mom to work on her bitterness before she goes, because a heart of bitterness is not equipped for heaven, and you can't convince and guilt trip God enough in the days of judgment, when we are to be judged. You will not be able to guilt trip God and justify why you were bitter with anybody, because being bitter with anyone and not forgiving anyone is considered a sin, and God won't forgive you in return. So that's what I wanted to say about that.